All righty. I once read that a doctor said that the number one contributing factor in a successful attempt to quit smoking is a previous attempt to quit. And I think what he was saying is that people rarely succeed on the first try. But those who are able to quit permanently are those who keep trying as many times as it takes. And of course, that applies to any lifestyle change that you want to make, any habit that you want to do differently, whether it's diet or exercise or having a daily devotional, and on and on. People rarely hit a home run with their first swing of the bat. The key is to keep trying. And this applies especially to the topic that we've been looking at for the past month and a half, which is getting closer to God. It's a never-ending process, a lifestyle choice that you make every day. In one of my earlier messages, I called it the journey of yes, where all throughout the day we're saying over and over, yes, God, I want you near. And like any lifestyle change, it takes more than one attempt to get there. For this reason, let me turn on the microphone over at the other building. I just happened to remember. For this reason, we sometimes feel like giving up. And you know how it goes. You make a little progress and something goes wrong, you get distracted, and you wander off course. And you find yourself thinking the wrong things and saying the wrong things and yielding to the wrong attitudes until you finally just stop and say, wait a minute, this is not where I want to be. And in this moment, we're often tempted to think, what's the use? Who am I kidding? I'm never going to get this right. Now, I mentioned home runs a minute earlier. While Willie Mays began his Major League Baseball career, he was going 1 for 26 at the plate. And one day, his manager found him literally crying in the dugout after another miserable game. And Willie Mays said, I don't belong here. And the manager said, in effect, you do belong here. And you're staying. And he did, and sure enough, Willie Mays became a legend. The truth is, we all have those 1 for 26 slumps where every day we stumble again and again, and we find it hard to get back into the rhythm of doing things right. And we're not the only ones who struggle with this. There are certainly some folks who try to make you think that you're the only one who struggles. They act like they've got it all together. But the truth is, we all stumble. The temptation is always there to give up the pursuit. And we get this idea that closeness to God is a state that we achieve, a place that we arrive, or a status that we attain. But the Bible tells us something different. Closeness with God is not a place. It's a pursuit, a persistent pursuit. It's not defined by how many times you fall down. It's defined by how many times you get back up and seek to abide in His presence for another day. And that's exactly what Paul's talking about in Philippians 3. At the beginning of verse 12, he says, not that I have already reached the goal or am already fully mature, but I make every effort to take hold of it. Now just think about that for a minute. Paul the apostle, the church planter, the missionary, the one who wrote half of the New Testament, said, I still haven't arrived. I still haven't reached my goal. But actually, it shouldn't be that surprising. Because as it turns out, the closer you get to God, the further you realize you had to go. And as soon as you get smug about your progress, especially in comparing yourself to other people, that's when you start losing ground. The Christian life is not about reaching perfection in this world, as most folks define perfection. It's about pressing on. It's about refusing to live chained to the past and choosing instead to stay in the race and to run in such a way that you might win. In the course of this series, I've talked about what's involved in a closer walk with Christ. You eliminate the distractions and you toss aside everything that stands in the way, and you draw near to Him. You turn your heart in His direction and you stay there. You abide there in His presence all throughout the day, which means that you follow His command to love others and walk in His forgiveness and extend His mercy to those that you come in contact with. Tonight, in this final message of this series, I want to talk about what the Apostle Paul himself did to maintain a close relationship with Jesus. In Philippians 3, he shows us 3 attitudes that we all need to adopt in order to live closer to Jesus every day of our lives. Here's the first attitude that defines a closer walk with Jesus. Being closer to God means focusing on what matters most. Now, in the first part of Philippians 3, Paul talks about how he's turned away from the things that used to seem important to him. His racial identity and his religious credentials and the disdain that he held for anyone who didn't agree with him. And he admits that he once persecuted Christian believers, which we know from the book of Acts. And that also included celebrating their murder. And then he had the Damascus Road experience, where he saw the light, literally. And he became a fully devoted follower of Christ. And he changed from the inside out. There are some who, when they change their ideology, they're just changing the color of their jersey. They go from being arrogant, hateful, and intolerant on this side to being arrogant, hateful, and intolerant on that side. And that's not acceptable to God. This is why he said, in effect, if you abide in me, you abide in my love. Paul understood that. He understood that this isn't about persecuting your ideological enemy. The Christian life is about something totally different. In Philippians 3, verses 10 and 11, he said this, "My goal is to know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings, being conformed to his death, assuming that I will somehow reach the resurrection from among the dead." Now, some translations say to become like him in his death. And that's what mattered most to him, to know Jesus and to be like him. And he was quick to include this qualification in the next verse, in verse 12. "Not that I have already reached the goal or am already fully mature or have reached perfection," more or less. If anyone had the right to say, "I've arrived," I think it would have been Paul. But he says, "I'm not there yet." And that's the attitude that we all need to have. Here's the lesson. The Christian life is not about being better than anyone else or pretending you're better than anyone else or looking down on anyone else. It's taking stock of your priorities and saying, more than anything else, I want to know Jesus. I want to be close to him. And even if it means that I suffer like he suffered, I want to be like him. And I know that I'm not there yet. This attitude is fundamental to living the Christian life. And it means we also resist the temptation to say, I know I'm not there yet, but I'm a whole lot closer than you are. In sports, measuring success is pretty easy. You look at the scoreboard. You count the wins and the losses. But how do you measure success in the Christian life? What counts as a win? Well, it's knowing Jesus and becoming like him. That's what success is. That's what the Father's plan is for all of us. Paul said in Romans 8:29, for God knew his people in advance, and he chose them to become like his Son. Closeness happens when we focus on what matters most, which is knowing Jesus and becoming like him. Here's the second attitude that defines a closer walk. Being closer to God means forgetting about the past. Philippians 3:13 says, brothers, I do not consider myself to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and reaching forward to what is ahead. Forgetting the past, or as the Holman translation says, forgetting what lies behind. What does it mean when Paul says, forget the past? It's not about erasing the past or pretending that it never happened. We've all heard the saying, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. So that's not what he's talking about. Clearly, Paul has not erased the past from his mind. Because let's face it, he just mentioned how he used to persecute the church. He didn't delete those days from his memory, but he no longer lets those days define who he is and who he's going to be. Forgetting the past means refusing to be controlled by the past. It means no longer letting yesterday dictate what you do today. We often think of the past as things that happened years ago. And we certainly need to let those things go too. But the past is also what happened yesterday. And we need to forget that as well. Especially when it doesn't serve our purpose. Both of these fall into the category of what lies behind. Neither one can do you any good. The sooner we let them go, the better off we're going to be. The prophet Jeremiah said in Lamentations 3:22 and 23, and this is in the English Standard Version, he said, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Now let's be clear about what it means to forget the past. It's not a total erasure. There are some aspects of the past that we want to remember because we don't ever want to go through that again. But we forget that part of the past that holds us back, that tells us this is who you are and this is who you'll always be. We forget the part of the past that says, you don't deserve God's mercy. You don't deserve God's blessing. You don't deserve to be happy because of that thing back there. Remembering that part of the past can only keep you from being close to Jesus. So forget about it. Here's the third attitude that defines a closer walk. Being closer to God means pressing on every day. Paul says in Philippians 3, verses 13 and 14, "Brothers, I do not consider myself to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and reaching forward to what is ahead. I pursue as my goal the prize promised by God's heavenly call in Christ Jesus." Now that phrase, reaching forward, here in the Holman, is interpreted using different words depending on what translation you have. The New Living Translation says looking forward. Others say straining forward or stretching forward. The word used conveys intense spiritual effort in a determined focus in order to achieve a specific goal. The Contemporary English Version has these two verses this way. "My friends, I don't feel I have already arrived, but I forget what is behind, and I struggle for what is ahead. I run toward the goal so I can win the prize of being called to heaven. This is the prize God offers because of what Christ Jesus has done." In essence, Paul is saying, I'm giving this everything I've got, every bit of my effort. And then he says, I press on towards the goal. The term press on means to pursue or to give chase. In a negative sense, it could be used to describe the good guy hunting down the bad guy. In a positive sense, it's used to describe a person who relentlessly is pursuing a worthwhile goal. It's the language of an athlete running hard for the finish line, giving everything they've got in order to pass. So what does this look like in the Christian life? Well, it means that every day, all throughout the day, at every turn, we're saying, yes, Lord, I want to be with you. All throughout the day, we're putting ourselves back into the right position that we know we need to be in. Writer Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, once said that when flying to a destination, airplanes are off course 90% of the time. Now, he didn't mean that literally. His point was that due to turbulence and various factors when you're in the air, planes are constantly adjusting and modifying their direction in order to stay on course. I remember when I was little, riding in the car with my mom, and we were going straight down a road. The road was, if you've been to Kansas, you know how straight some of them roads can be. I mean, it was a long shot, but she kept having to adjust the wheel. And I said, how come you keep turning the wheel? We're going straight. That's because there are fluctuations in the road. And of course, in the car itself, it needs to be aligned. You've got to adjust that stuff. It's the same with a plane, apparently. And we do the same thing. All throughout the day, little things can happen that take us off course, take us off the path. Things that distract us and get us to think about anything other than abiding in Jesus. pressing on means that we keep our eyes on the prize and keep moving forward no matter how many corrections it takes along the way. Pressing on means being persistent. It means getting up and trying again. Proverbs 24:16 says, "For though the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again." Pressing on means you don't give up on yourself. It has never happened in my life that I've wanted to give up on God. That He's disappointed me to the point that I simply want to quit. Now, some people may have had that experience, but I haven't. But I can tell you about a guy that I've wanted to give up on more times than I can count. And that's me. Now, maybe you've had that experience as well. Not giving up on me, but giving up on yourself. Pressing on means that you refuse to let anything take you off course. Not the guilt of the past, not the uncertainty of the present, and not the fear of the future. I think I've used this illustration before, but it fits really well at this point. In the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City, the last runner to finish one of the marathons was John Stephen Akhwari from Tanzania. Earlier in the race, he had taken a bad fall, dislocating his knee and separating his shoulder. Everyone expected him to quit. Instead, he bandaged his leg as best he could, and he got back on the track, and he kept going. Hours after the winner had already crossed the finish line, and the medals for that event had already been given out, Akhwari finally entered the stadium, limping, but still moving forward. And you can see video of this on YouTube. Just type in 1968 Olympics and Akhwari, and you can see video of him when he comes in to the stadium. When reporters asked him why he didn't quit, his answer made headlines. He said, "My country did not send me 5,000 miles to start the race. They sent me to finish it." That's the message that we get all throughout the New Testament. We're here to finish the race. It says it in Hebrews 12, in 1 Corinthians 9, in 2 Timothy 4, and here in Philippians chapter 3. God didn't call you to start the Christian life and then give up when things got hard. He called you to press on, to finish, to keep going until the prize is yours. The best part is that He is with you all along the way. This is not about trying to get to heaven while He watches from a distance. It's about taking life's journey with Him every day, every step of the way. He's extended this invitation to everyone. Come to me, and your life will flow with rivers of living water. Draw close to me, and I will draw close to you. Abide in me, and I'll abide in you. Choose to be with me all throughout the day, and you will never thirst again. Take out your prayer sheets, if you would.